While that foot is being pushed into the ground, we see this abduction moment at the forefoot where it's being pushed outward. This, with the combination of the linebacker crushing the foot, stresses the Lisfranc complex and leads to the injury. The Las Vegas Raiders addendum to Jimmy Garoppolo's contract showed specifically the type of Lisfranc injury he sustained. We're going to be breaking this injury down, discussing the timeline and what went wrong. And stay tuned until the end of this video. We have a special guest appearance by Standford and Harvard trained sports surgeon, Dr. Deepak Chona. He'll be giving us a data-driven analysis of when he should be able to return to play and whether he'll be ready for week 1. Let's jump straight into Jimmy G's injury. As Garoppolo spins away from pressure, we see 2 Miami Dolphins defenders trying to take him down. The 260-pound linebacker number 15, Phillips, inadvertently drives his left knee into Garoppolo's left foot. Jimmy G's ankle is awkwardly everted relative to his shin. This almost looks like a common high ankle sprain mechanism. However, notice the defender Phillips. His entire body is up in the air, and as he's coming down, he lands directly on the outside of that midfoot area. While that foot is being pushed into the ground, we see this abduction moment at the forefoot where it's being pushed outward. This, with the combination of the linebacker crushing the foot, stresses the Lisfranc complex and leads to the injury. The alarming sign is when Garoppolo makes this second contact with the turf. Look at how much you see that shoe move. It's possible that his cleats were loose, but in hindsight, what we're likely seeing is how that fracture led to some significant instability of the midfoot, because you shouldn't be able to just contact the turf and then have this much movement in that everted position. The mechanism behind Garoppolo's injury is somewhat similar to how Darren Mcfadden suffered his Lisfranc injury, where you see the Chiefs defender land on the back of his plantar flexed right foot, causing a displacement of the second metatarsal bone. And after this sequence of events, we can see just how deformed Garoppolo's foot looks as he goes down. The bones of the foot can be divided into 3 separate parts. You have the hind foot, the midfoot where Jimmy G suffered his injury, and you have the forefoot. Hind foot contains 2 bones, the calcaneus and the talus bone. The midfoot has the cuneiform bones, the cuboid and the navicular bone. And then the forefoot contains the long part of the foot, which is the metatarsals and the phalange. The joint between the metatarsals and the midfoot, this joint here is called the TMT joint, or the tarsometatarsal joint. And it's also known as the Lisfranc complex. This complex provides stability to the foot by connecting these 2 parts. It helps transfer the energy generated by the calf muscle to the toes during the push-off phase of walking or running. This actually propels the body. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Nav. If you guys are learning something new, don't forget to give this a huge thumbs up, and please smash that subscribe button. It really helps our family grow. Thank you. The Lisfranc ligament runs between the medial cuneiform bone here and the base of the second metatarsal. It's going to be this little guy I've circled. It looks small, looks like it's not that big of a deal, but it's like this Jenga block where if you pull it out or if it gets injured, it can cause the rest of the midfoot stability to essentially collapse, leaving the whole midfoot arch with no structural integrity. So Garoppolo ends up having a fracture, likely in this bone, and the base of this second metatarsal head. We found out on March 17th that Jimmy had failed a physical and that the team doctors were recommending that he do have surgery. Surgery possibly required a plate or screws across the joint to help stabilize it. And here is Dr. Deepak Chona giving us a data-driven prediction of when he'll likely return.
Jimmy Garoppolo's situation is not the typical Lisfranc. Skill position players average about 10 months to return, and they usually see a pretty sizable performance hit when they do get back. But because Garoppolo had surgery in a delayed fashion, we would expect him to be more along the 4 to 6 month timeline, and given a March surgery date, that gives him a really good chance of being ready around the time of training camp and certainly by the start of week 1. Now, because his play style doesn't really rely on agility or mobility, we wouldn't really expect to see a performance hit when he does return.
That's it for the video today. If you guys learned something new, please give this a huge thumbs up and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. It really helps our family grow.